What's up, everybody? This podcast is going to be a good conversation if you are into creating content, because I have my good friend Chris Greene on, and we're not even talking about flood insurance with this guy, which is what most people would expect. What we're actually talking about is all the stupid stuff we've done and what we've learned over the course of the last couple of years in our content creation game. And Chris doesn't hold anything back. I mean, it's a really raw and good conversation that I think anybody out there who's aspiring to build your online footprint will definitely get something from. However, if you're one of those producers or an agency principal and you have no interest in learning all the intricacies of how to do this, I would encourage you to check out Crushing Content. I'm a proud papa. My two sons are the ones who run this, but it is a done-for-you content service that will get you a bigger footprint online, more brand awareness, and subsequently traffic to your website, which ultimately leads to conversions. Check out crushing-content.com today, and you'll get the down low on all of the services, all of the pricing. We're 100% transparent about it. Check it out today. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. And today, it seems like we're following a theme with the people that we are recording with, because we have another multiple-time guest, Mr. Chris Greene, with us. You might think we're going to talk about flood insurance because he's on here, and you might be wrong, because I have a feeling we're going to talk about other stuff that will help more agents. Not that flood insurance doesn't help a lot, but a lot of you guys have questions, and you ladies have questions around what's going on with AI. You know, you can probably learn a lot from what Chris has learned over the last few years with YouTube and how he's used that to get his brand out there and grow that. And so, you know, we may talk about flood, but I don't know that that's where we're going to head with this. So what's going on, man?
Thanks for having me, David.
Absolutely. Anytime. You know that. What's going on in your world?
Not much. Just as I said, just playing a lot with some AI stuff. And I tell my team, testing, and adapting, just like the insurance industry every day.
Yeah, no kidding. So talk a little bit about like kind of where you're at now, because I know that you've made a lot of changes over the last little bit. It seems like you've had a coach for almost everything. And, you know, kudos to you for going deep and learning this stuff at a completely different level than what most are willing to go to. But, you know, I know that YouTube has always kind of been your thing, and video has always kind of been your thing. And then learning how to integrate that with your website and to drive people, you know, there through your video presence. You know, what's changed in the last little bit? Because I think probably if you're like me, and I think you're probably better than I am, you know, you get started on doing this stuff, and it's about let's just get a bunch of stuff up and we'll slap it up there, and you know, people will see it and we'll have a presence online, and you start getting some level of traction with it, so you don't ever really go back and figure out how to optimize that and fine tune it. And now you're realizing, man, if I would have just slowed down and done this way from the beginning, I think I probably would have been a little bit further ahead, because we've gone through a little bit of that too with my stuff. I've got a YouTube expert on staff now that literally goes in and does videos and does optimization and stuff for us. But to talk about what that's been like.
Yeah, so it probably goes back to probably 2.5 years ago when I decided, to really invest in StoryBrand, completely developing with They Ask You Answer and our website. It was a $50,000 project. It was a disaster. But I was like, there's got to be a better way in this. I said, I'm learning a lot of this. I'm learning a lot of storytelling, and I start working on my master's degree in digital marketing, trying to figure out, hey, am I going to do my MBA with it? And I start getting deeper and deeper into some artificial intelligence stuff. And as I start working on my digital marketing, one of the classes I had to work on was actually implementing a $100,000 project into our company that I had to present 6 months later in my master's. So it was at that point when I discovered, this thing could be very beneficial. It's not a or situation, it's an and situation. So how do I use these tools to enhance my customer relationships? How do I use it to enhance our employee performance, our employee morale? If I'm not around and I can't answer a question, how do we use these tools where my team has access to a lot of what I've created all the time? And that's how I got so deep into this the last 2 years, a lot of testing. I'll give a shout out to one of my old coaches, Kerry Weston, who's a They Ask You Answer coach, but he kind of got me originally into ChatGPT now, gosh, probably a year and a half ago when it first started coming out. And as I said, I've gotten deeper and deeper. We've started building some guides now almost like a knowledge base on it, keeping it private, not taking it public or anything like that. But hey, I've got these two companies. I'm trying to compare them. I'm trying to find exclusions, but I've spent 2.5 hours going through the policy jackets. Can you help
Hmm.
me answer the question? Well, what if there was a tool that could help you take that 2 hours and turn it into 5 minutes, and immediately you can show the client, hey, here's the exposure here. And so that's one of the things I've been spending a lot of time on. I've been using chat, not just ChatGPT, Llama, all of them, not necessarily with content writing, but helping people understand the difference between content writing and copywriting. Not using AI to replace yourself, but using AI almost like a virtual assistant. Doing these small things. Hey, I'm struggling coming up with these ideas. Give me these 10 ideas, like you mentioned on YouTube. Give me 10 ideas. All right, now let me reverse engineer my way back to the top 2 ideas. And that's why I tell people a lot of what has changed with me with YouTube now is reverse engineering. Instead of maybe creating we'll briefly talk about flood for a second, but maybe instead of creating a video for flood insurance for homeowners, I'm creating a video on first-time homebuyers in Savannah, Georgia, between the ages of 24 to 32 years old that make about $75,000 a year and are going to have a mortgage of at least 200,000. And I was like, well, you're not going to be talking to as many people. You're right. I'm going to be talking to a tenth of the amount of people I normally am. My conversions are going to be through the roof though, because their intent and my messaging is right in line. Just like how I've gone through my Facebook and I've deleted a lot of people that, hey, if it doesn't fall within these buckets, I'm not focused on it. Just like we talked about leaving like some Facebook groups, like distractions. How do I remove these distractions? Using AI as a part of that. A lot of those AI tools can be a distraction. So being able to figure out a way of, hey, what's not a distraction?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. I think, for me, one of the cool ways that I've started using Chat GPT specifically is, right now, if as we're recording, my Zoom is integrated with Otter. So I know when I'm done that I'm going to have a summary of us, having the podcast, and then it's going to give me, you know, key quotes that were made during the podcast. It's going to give me a summary. It's going to give me some timestamps and things like that. Then it gives me the full transcription. Well, when we do our private community calls for Killing Commercial and Power Producers Base Camp, Otter's in there. So what I started doing was going in and taking that full transcription and then having Chat GPT create an outline for a long form blog post from the transcription of the call, and then actually having it write the long form blog post, not because I'm putting it up for public facing stuff, because I don't want that to be out. It's private protected information. But what it allows me to do is give people, here's the summary, here's some high level quotes, here is a long form post that's going to go into far more detail about what's going on. But now somebody, instead of having to go watch an hour-long call that honestly, not everything applies to every, producer every time we have a call, they can spend 5 minutes reading a 1,500 word to 2,000 word post and then say, you know what, probably need to go watch this one.
So my SEO coach does this in his calls. He's like, hey, I mentioned this in this video. It's an hour-long video. But all I got to do is type in my name when he mentions me on the call, and it takes me directly to the section of where he's answering my question, which is part of the AI he's using. Like I've used Descript for probably several years now, because everyone's like, oh, well, AI is not human content. Well, this is an easy way to do it. Like I've always told people, I will always do a video first. And the reason is I might be able to get a podcast out of a video. I might be able to get a blog out of a video. I can't do it the other way around. I can take a video, throw it in Descript, and have ChatGPT help with the outline and help with the blog. And now it's human, it's storytelling because it's pulling my words out of my video.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, the other thing too is because it's a learned language model, my God, man, I got plenty of written content that I've put that's in my own voice over the years. So my Chat GPT at this point is really, really smart about writing in my voice. So much so that there's a lot of times I can't tell that it's not me writing it. I mean, obviously I know it's not, but if I read it and I'm like trying to shoot holes in it, I'm like, crap, this thing's getting pretty accurate with how it writes. But I think when you're using the transcriptions of you talking, that helps keep things in your voice so that you're attracting the audience that you want to attract to do that. But the other thing that I started doing this week with it that I thought was pretty cool, and this goes back to the newest version of it that's out now that Dolly's kind of embedded into the premium version, is I had a coaching call on doing experience modification analysis. And I went in and, did my normal thing that I did where I did a blog post, but I'm like, you know what? I could probably actually create some pretty good client facing marketing slicks based off of the content that was in here. So I went through the sub points and I did one on, why you should have a mod audit. I did another one on the top discrepancies that you find when you do a mod audit. And then I had another one that was an overview of the process, another one on how it impacts premium. And the cool part was it was able to put the text and everything for those together. But then I went back in and actually had it create pie charts and graphics and all of that other stuff. And it did a pretty darn good job. Now, they weren't good enough that I would put them in to a marketing slick the way they were. But what they were good enough for was for me to communicate with my full-time graphics guy that I have on staff anyhow, who it would be very cumbersome for me to explain to him, hey, this is what an experience mod is. This is what this graphic needs to be. But instead I could send it to him and say, I like the general format, but I need you to clean this up. I need you to get it into branding, in our colorway and all of that other stuff. And he just sent me the finished work product this morning, and it was fantastic, man. I was really, really impressed with how well it turned out.
And he probably did it in a tenth of the time because that was like
100%.
showing you, hey, here's my end result. Here's where I want to be. But it may have been very more difficult for you to kind of visualize that for him initially.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, I think that's the thing, man. So many people are worried about, and we were talking about this a little bit. So many people are worried that ChatGPT and all this AI is going to come in and replace humans. No, it's actually not in my agency at all. It's making us much more efficient and able to focus on the things that actually do require human interaction. And it makes us better as a result of that. So, to your point, the efficiency that I get, I know what my vision is for something in my head. Where there's a disconnect is when I can't articulate what I want that to look like to somebody else, especially somebody who's over in Pakistan that, may not, even though speaks good English, may not speak the nuances and the slang. I'm constantly having to remind myself I need to be more proper in the English that I use because that's what they would understand more than me and you talking. But for me to be able to take that and go down that road and make him more efficient. And I mean, look, let's call it what it is. I could also just go ahead and ask ChatGPT to translate my instructions into Urdu, which is their native language, and then talk to him in his own language. And maybe it translates, maybe it doesn't. But I'm good with the things the way they are right now. And I think that, using it to generate the graphics and the art and all of the other stuff is an interesting twist to something we haven't normally done, because a lot of the AI generated graphics and things we do, we're doing inside of Midjourney. We're not doing it inside
So
of
there's I don't know if you've ever heard of a podcast called Everyday AI. This guy used to be a journalist. He got deep into AI, like right when it came out. He literally does a podcast every day. So today's episode he was testing 4 different images, and he was taking audience questions to figure out if they could figure out which one was human generated and which one wasn't. And he was using Midjourney, a bunch of the different ones.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and Cass talked about this at BrainShare when it was in Orlando, that there was like this or not Orlando, in New Orleans, rather, 2 very different places. One, I will go with my family, the other, probably not, or by myself for that matter. But he was talking about like some kind of a human versus AI art contest, I think is what it was. And there was a guy who did a painting, and then a guy who did a painting with AI. And it was an interesting study. I don't even remember what the punchline was to it, like what the hook was, but it wasn't that the guy with AI took less time, because he actually took almost the same amount of time, but his work product was actually far more accurate, because with the AI, you could go in and change specific things. Whereas if you're painting something in real time, that's just not going to happen.
It's just like I'm sure you know what NLP keywords are.
Yes.
But probably most people don't. Like if you're writing a blog with a main topic, these keywords are like the words that are going in the actual article. And most people don't think, hey, I need a designated piece of asset for these other words as well. This is how I recognize the Google that, how do I show up in search for ChatGPT? Well, you keep creating extremely valuable content. That's exactly how you get into the citations. There's no hidden secret here. It's just creating an incredible amount of value in your content. And so that's one of the things we've been doing with the content is like, look, we need all these designated assets. I've been doing a test for Savannah, Georgia, where I created 50 pieces of SEO assets for this one city. And literally 2 days later, we were ranking in #1. And I hadn't even put out 80% of the content yet. Even my cousin who lives 4 hours from me, he said, man, you keep showing up my YouTube. There was nobody down there doing videos.
Well, when we go in and I do this stuff for the blog posts that I'm using is the written version of our killer calls for Killing Commercial. One of the things that I ask it to do is to create a list of tags, keyword tags. Now, I'm not, again, this is for a private community, so I'm not necessarily using it for SEO, but I'm using it so that we can tag the blogs. And when people use the search function in the private community, that they're going to come up in the search, and they can also just search by tag in general and get a list of those. But I think that the same thing holds true, man. Like if I were using it to put blog posts out that I was going to use ChatGPT to organize, even if it's in my own words, I want it to come up with headlines. I want it to give me the right H1 and H2 that I should be using in that blog post for SEO purposes. And I also wanted to identify the right anchor text so I know the best places for me to do internal and external links inside the blog. And again, you could have the Yoast plugin and some of these other tools that you can use to do search engine optimization, but that really cuts down on the amount of time that you need to spend in even using those tools if it identifies that stuff on the front end for you.
Well, not only that, but people also get mixed up with search engine optimization. They just keep thinking Google. It's like, no, Facebook is search engine optimization. Instagram, knowing your target audience, the way people are searching, the things people are searching for.
They're well, YouTube's the second biggest search engine on the planet.
Yeah. And I mean, it's owned by Google, but when I tell people, I said, when you're trying to figure out SEO and all this stuff, don't get obsessed with Google. No matter what platform you're on, they're using a way of doing it. You just have to understand it or work with someone who does to help you understand those things so that, look, people find all kinds of stuff from us on Facebook because we address it as a search engine optimization tool.
Yeah. And that's the thing, man. You can't necessarily apply these principles across the board because every one of the platforms has its own nuances. And that's one of the reasons why when we built out the team we're using for crushing content, I didn't just want people that were going to be worker bees that could, do edit videos, create reels and do that kind of stuff. I wanted people who understood. I wanted somebody who was an expert in SEO. I wanted somebody who had been in copywriting. I wanted somebody who could go deep in YouTube and Facebook and all of that stuff. Didn't ask for anybody in LinkedIn. I could cover that myself. But, I think it's really important that people understand, you don't just want to go out. If you said, hey, you know what, I'm really going to up my content marketing game. I'm going to go out and establish a footprint, and I want to be increasing my brand awareness so that people everywhere on every platform can know who I am. And they go out and it's boom, the same content everywhere. There's no real thought process put into it. Even the structure of your post, the cadence of when you post, all of that stuff, and you just slap it out there. Are you going to get some level of success? Yeah, probably, because you weren't doing anything at all before. But are you going to really get the most bang for your buck when you're spending the time to do this stuff? And the answer is no, you're not. You really need to probably start out with one, maybe two platforms that you're comfortable with. And if you're comfortable with them right now, doesn't mean that you know everything you need to know. But those are the ones you're comfortable with. So go deep dive into those because it's going to flatten your learning curve more. Then if you want to add stuff from there as you go, and it makes sense, do that. But you can't just
that's why we kind of scaled back
on
on LinkedIn, not because LinkedIn's bad. It's just because YouTube's our thing, and like that's where we generate our revenue. But like I've talked to a lot of companies, oh, I want to create content, all this. The problem is they don't even know their revenue per account. They don't know where they're making the most revenue in their agency. I said, look, that's the first step. And then once you figure out the revenue, now let's build different target audiences for inside your book of business, like target A, target B. So when you're writing an email, you're speaking directly to that audience, and they feel it. Oh, I'm not just a number. Like you're speaking. They feel like you're speaking one to one. I said, but you can't know that unless you know your target audience. When you're talking about like demographics, behavioral, all the pain points are different for a new home buyer compared to someone who's owned a home 5 years, someone who's married versus single. I mean, it's all different. But the problem is everybody tries to address it the same. I know because I did for 3 years, and that was the biggest fail we had was like on blogs. We were too being, oh, let's just hit it across the whole country. We weren't being specific enough. The other problem I made is we were writing blog posts. We weren't doing the outline first. When I reverse those, night and day difference. Even though with ChatGPT, it helps me build an outline, it gets me about 70% there. When I finish it on my own and I start writing it, I can write a blog in a tenth of the time I could before because it's following that outline. Google knows what it's about. I make sure, oh, it didn't cover this. I need to break these down a little further. It shows me things that I am missing when I go through that outline versus writing a blog. It shows me how things are connected.
Yeah, no, I think that that's something we've also done as well, is to make sure that we're going through and doing
But
an
it's like
outline.
copywriting, like my nephew said to me the other day, he said, "Isn't content writing and copywriting the same?" I said, "No, it's absolutely different." I said, "Writing a blog with your story is completely different than copy. Yes, they both sell, but copy is more of a conversion process. A copy may have to do more than add a landing page. When a blog you don't have to truly be a copywriter to write a blog. You can be kind of lazy about it. You can't do that with a landing page or a sales page because the way you got to convert. And if you are bad at copy, it's not going to convert. Trust me."
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I mean, the other thing too is, when you're looking at copywriting is more, from my perspective anyhow, copywriting is more for advertising and
Yep.
blogging is more for storytelling, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's how I look at the two of them.
But I will say that storytelling is still an important part in copywriting. When I tell people, I said, I'm not talking about telling a whole story. Just like I teach our video editor storytelling. Look, your storytelling has got to be on point in B-roll, like using specific words that can tell a whole story with 1 or 2 words. And I said, that's a huge part. And everybody goes, oh, well, ChatGPT can do it. Yeah, it can do a lot of it, but you still really need that human touching it. You still really need that human creativity.
Yeah, and I think to your point, knowing the right B-roll to put in is something that I don't think a lot of people really think through. I mean, a lot of people probably don't put B-roll in at all. But if
No.
you look at some of the highest view, and I'll be the first one to tell you, I don't always have B-roll in our stuff, but if you go and look at some of the best, the reels and the TikTok stuff that has really good reach on it, every time they make a point, there's some sort of B-roll that reflects what they just said that cuts you away from whoever was speaking and actually ties the visual to the audio. And I think that it sticks and it makes it a more creative piece of content anyhow.
And I tell our team too, like they may do a picture of New York when I'm talking about Savannah, Georgia. I said, that's terrible storytelling. And I said, you got to get as close to the real city as possible. If it costs us a little extra money, that's okay. Because as soon as people see that, oh, this is real, they really can visualize what's at stake. What could they lose? Because through the B-roll, we've been able to visualize, oh, wait, that's my town or that's my neighborhood. Is it going to be perfect every time? No, but we've got to get it as close to it as possible. And I said, especially with the B-roll, though, if I'm talking about, something important, we got to be able to show it just in the text in the video as well. Once again, to the storytelling of just a couple of words can be night and day difference.
How much are you doing with green screen stuff instead? Because I mean, the old Chris Greene was on a road tour across the United States to shoot content on location everywhere. Have you replaced that by being able to just get video footage of wherever you want to talk about and use green screen to do it, or are you not doing any of it?
No, I'd say green screen is probably less than 1%. I might do it every now and then. I'm just not a green screen kind of guy. And I'm an outside kind of guy, and so I do still travel around, not as much because I can't because of my health. But locally, I'm still trying to figure out, hey, if I'm shooting a video for a business, I'm staying in front of a business. If I'm shooting a video for a new homeowner, I'm maybe staying in front of a home that's for just something that helps them identify. And trust me, we had a heat index of 106 the other day. It was about to kill me, but I was like, it's important to people though. And I hear from people all the time said, look, I knew immediately that you weren't in front of a green screen. I knew that you were standing in my city answering my questions, and that means a lot to me. That's to me, that's somebody I can trust. Now, something else I'm playing around with those videos too is when they go to that landing page, having a local phone number, potentially a local address. I'm testing some of that stuff as well right now in Savannah, Georgia, with a new address. And figuring out a budget every month of, having that local address with Google and all these different things and just kind of testing it out before we scale it.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're doing that in Savannah, that's not an accident. There's opportunity in
Yes.
Savannah because of the potential for flood and everything else that's there. You're not going to
Well, I mean, they
go.
just had one of the worst floods in city history 3 weeks ago.
Right, but you're
Uh,
not going to go to Nebraska and have, unless there's a potential flood issue, there, right? And I want to make sure people are clear about this. Chris
well, I
isn't
did a
just
few
saying,
years ago.
right. Maybe a bad example, but I want to say, people to be
No,
clear, Chris isn't just randomly going and saying, I should get a phone number and have an address in Savannah. There's a very specific reason why, because he knows that there's opportunity there for him
just
in
like Birmingham
Savannah.
and Huntsville are good markets for us. We're an inland company on flood. I've always told, look, we will do coastal stuff. It's not our specialty. Like inland is our city. So if I'm in Nashville, yeah, it's a 4 hour drive for me, but I might find a way to shoot on a city overlook look or something that looks as close as possible. If I'm talking about condo insurance, I'm not necessarily going to Nebraska, but I might be standing in front of a condo locally as I'm shooting that video and I kind of help them relate, as I'm pointing to the building and all that. So no, you don't have to do that. I'm just kind of an outside guy. I'm a visual guy. So I like being able to be right in front of it. Whatever I'm talking about, I like to be right there. So when my rule is, hey, the majority of the time, YouTube, Facebook videos, they're on mute. I need to give people a reason to take it off mute. And I use my environment to do that. Always have.
What about, I mean, what else, are you doing anything on Instagram in terms of reels or things like that? Or you just stay in YouTube,
I
Facebook, and
backed
that's
off
kind of it?
Instagram. Like we'll post from time to time. Now we'll probably reinvest in Instagram over the next few years as we continue to build our target audiences. Like for example, if I was going after first-time home buyers, I may spend some time on Instagram because that's usually an audience of 24 to 28, and so that may be more of an audience for an Instagram than a Facebook would. And once again, that goes back to knowing your target audience. But if I'm talking to a real estate investor, I'm probably creating a lot of content for LinkedIn or for YouTube, probably not as much TikTok. And so I've got to understand my audience before I decide what medium I'm gonna go to.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But when you're specifically mentioning that demographic in Savannah, when I hear that, I immediately think that's an Instagram demographic more than it is a
Yeah,
Facebook.
and it potentially could be. And down the road it might be. Just right now, as I said, I'm trying to kind of test things and all right, let's figure out how this works. Let's figure out, how the audience is performing with a sales page. So maybe it is something we go and do a reel for Instagram and we send them over to a landing page or something.
Well, and the reason I was asking, and I suppose this is true on YouTube Shorts and Facebook Reels as well. I've noticed from our own results how much different it is when you actually find an impactful, even when my cooking stuff, man, which has nothing to do with the podcast or whatever. But if I'm smoking, pulled pork and I, put my reel up just as it is, and all you see is the front of a grill, not very many people are going to click on that. But if they see that cover image of me being elbow deep in soft pork meat, pulling it, they're going to be like, oh man, I need to see what this guy did to get to that point.
And that's one of the challenges with YouTube too, is you can't really do a whole lot with thumbnails. But actually, I just finished a 45-day test on shorts, and I knew what the outcome was going to do before I did it, but I did it anyway. And everyone said, "Oh, shorts." I said, "No, actually, shorts hurts our long form content because on YouTube, our ideal audience is about 38 to 48 years old. That's typically not the shorts crowd. But
Right.
the other thing is that shorts, you're sending them usually the shorts. They're not usually, they're two different audiences. Short crowd usually isn't your long form crowd. Yes, you can bring them together a little bit, but it's very challenging. But it's got to understand, hey, I got to create content for these two audiences differently, not just taking my long form and throwing it up as a short.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, man. Like, I'd be interested in your thoughts. It's because a lot of people are going to take that YouTube video
And
if
I
it's
have.
and if it's 5 minutes long, chop it up into five
Yep.
shorts and thinks that's gonna get them what they need. When the reality is that that's not it. Like that's for us, the best thing for me to do is create like
A
if I'm gonna
dedicated
do a
short.
short, I'm just gonna give you the highlights of whatever's in that post, put it up. And we started doing that even with intros and stuff for the podcast. But go in there, give them the highlights because that's that person that watches one short they don't want to watch 5 shorts. If they did, they would just go watch the long form to begin with. So
Yep.
have it be a completely different piece of content that satisfies what that person wants and what they want to consume, and then put your long form stuff out. It's a completely different strategy around both of them. And I think so many people are under the impression that if you have the short up and then link back to the long form, that you're going to get a lot of people linking back. I just don't see it.
Or on the short, now I lost my train of thought there. Oh, on the short crowd as well. When you're doing these shorts, though, something like an Opus clip. But Opus clip can be great. Like a tub, it's like ChatGPT. It's only 70, 80% there. Half the stuff really doesn't look that clean. But it's, you can even see some of the stuff we've tested. Words don't show up correctly. You can tell when it was a long form video that was tried to make short form. So usually, shooting that video dedicated for short. Oh, that's what I was gonna say in shorts. So what I try to look at shorts more of is brand awareness. I'm not trying to get them into a long form video. I'm just trying to put them at the top, the bottom of the funnel where, hey, I'm trying to use it more of an awareness phase, and
Yeah,
then work
no,
their way to the top.
yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, again, it has to do more about the attention span and,
Yep.
and, and just how you consume it. Cause I mean, look, man, I start going down the Reels rabbit hole. I might watch an hour's worth of content, but I'm going to also probably watch 150 different, or at least scroll through, till I see what I want. 90% of which ends up being Theo Vaughn at some point or another. But
He's
um,
addictive, isn't he?
I can't turn it off when he's on there, man. I can literally have Theo Vaughn on mute and just see his facial expressions, and he makes me laugh. The dude's nuts.
But especially when he had on Dave Ramsey, I was like, "Those you bring those two crowds together?"
Oh, good grief. You sound like Geraldo when he got his nose broken, man.
I'm telling you, man, it was crazy. But
Mm,
yeah, the stuff with SEO too is, I don't know where to start, and that's where I've taught our team. I don't know if you've done this yet, but I've actually introduced our team now to Chat GPT teams. So I pay monthly, like $30 a month every month for each one of our team members to have access to all of the GPTs I build. So I was traveling for a funeral this week. Hey, we've got some coverage situations in this situation. I'm not real sure. I said, let's go to our GPT and ask it. So I'm on the phone with them within like 2 seconds. It said, oh, tells me exactly how this is going to be covered in this situation, and it highlights this part of the manual for me. And I said, this is where it's there. Do we rely on it completely? No, but it's a good guide for us.
yep.
And I said, so imagine a new employee who may be starting with us, who may have to ask you 40 questions. Maybe they only have to ask you 10 now.
Yeah, and I think, an analogy for me would be if I'm going to go to East Coast of Florida, I know how to get there,
Yep.
right? I could get in my car. I know the general idea how to get there. I could use a GPS and it's probably going to get me there, maybe in a more efficient manner. Or I could go to something like Waze, which is almost never wrong, man. Like every time I doubt Waze, it ends up and think, oh no, I'm going to go the way I know how. Waze knows because of the crowdsourcing component to it, number one. And so I look at it that way. We kind of know how to create content. We know how we could write a blog. But if you actually use the AI tools to enhance how you're going to do that, you're actually going to get to the end result a whole lot faster than if you're in there just trying to find your way. And I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there that are in that boat. Now, listen, if you're not doing anything at all, kudos to you for even starting. We're not judging you. We're not telling you, that you're wrong in how you're doing it. What we're doing is telling you, look, the two guys that are talking right here have put out probably more content than any two other people in the insurance industry when combined, for sure. I
Brian
just can't.
Hanley might have his beat.
He'd have to find a really strong second person to add to it, man.
So
But
real quick, I'll tell you the power of content. I was working with another agency. And we're talking about commercial insurance. We're talking about contractors, and we start researching it. And the number one name that comes up when you look for contractors insurance online is the name Ryan Hanley.
of course it is.
And I said, that's how you know that he was doing it right. And I said, you have to find a way to replicate that. I said, because he is known now with about commercial insurance, just like power producers, just like Florida Risk. Like people associate your name immediately.
Yep.
Just like what we've done with flood. You just have
Hey,
to
listen, man, I'll
find a
tell
way
you what
to do it.
it translates into business.
It does.
100% it translates into business because the amount, and I mean, look, ironically, putting out the podcast is creating content and putting it online. But I mean, we get a good number of referrals. Thank you very much for everybody who does it, from agents all across the country who can't or won't write in Florida. And they're like, no, I listen to this dude's podcast, and they've never seen me in an insurance appointment. They've never seen my finished work product, but they listen to the podcast and they know I know what I'm talking about. And because there's that personal connection, because your voice is going to resonate with the
Yep.
people who it resonates with, and you're not going to be everybody's flavor, and you have to be okay with that. But for the people it resonates with, you already have built trust because they've been listening to me for 4 years,
Yep.
you know? And it was funny because there's a guy that was an inbound lead from the website this week, and he called in, and I heard Nicole talking to him on speakerphone, and he said, I'm a producer from, another part of the country. I'm not going to say where, just in case, but I'm moving to Florida now. And he said, I've heard you on Insurance Guys podcast, and I've heard you on your own. And he goes, I want you to handle my personal insurance for me when I move to Florida, because I'm going to another agency and I don't want my personal insurance mixed with where I'm doing business, like where I'm an employee. And he's like, but I trust you guys unequivocally. I know you know what you're doing. And I'm thinking, wow, like that's pretty incredible.
It's just like a type of like video, like on your homepage. You need to have a video on your homepage because then immediately people know who you are. Like an image, yeah, but literally a video of just introducing yourself, so whatever, and immediately people are like, oh, that's somebody I could trust. Or hey, that's not a good fit for me. Look, talking to the right audience is just as important than letting the people who know aren't right for you.
Yeah. And I think the thing that's crazy in all of it is that if you just create the content and you're authentic in what you do, like I'm talking about blogging and video and stuff like that, and you're not going at it with the intent to sell, but the intent to educate, your audience is always going to find you, man. 100% of the time. It goes back to Marcus's original book. They ask, you answer. People are online looking for the answers to questions. They're not necessarily online looking for the person to sell them after they answered it. You're going to sell yourself by how thoroughly you go through and answer that question. And when to get that connection piece, that's one of the reasons why, if you ever go to my actual, not the podcast booking link, but and there may be one on there, I don't remember, but on the actual booking link on my normal calendar, it takes you, instead of taking you to my HubSpot calendar and that's it takes you to a page where my calendar's embedded, that's got a little bit about me, my bio on there, and then there's a video of me welcoming you and saying, hey, look, here's a little bit about me. Thanks so much for taking the time to schedule time. I look forward to us talking, blah, 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 blah. It's just a little bit of extra effort. That's it, a little bit. But when you finally meet with that person, they feel like they've known you forever.
Yeah, just like I have a friend that, man, he dresses so many different ways on his videos and he struggles. He's like, I don't struggle. I said, because you're trying to be like everybody else. And I said, there's no identity there. And your audience doesn't see an identity. They may see you wearing a hat backwards and a tie. Like, you got to figure, and if you're doing videos maybe for YouTube, maybe you do dress a certain way. Maybe you dress a certain way for Facebook. That's fine. But literally, it's a different way every other week. Trust me, I know, I've been there. I said, but they see that. And they see maybe that you're trying to be too much like someone else. Like I tell people, I usually have a jacket on if I'm doing a website video. Sometimes with YouTube, most of the time now,
I've been seeing the pink jacket a lot, man. I'm going to tell you, that seems to be your favorite right now. Or you just wore it one day and did a ton of content.
That too, that's the other thing. I batch a lot of my content. Like I shot 2 hours worth of content the other day, which ended up being about 20 different videos. But I did it in 4 different locations here in the city, and of course it didn't look the same. But the other thing is, look, when someone sees the same videos and me wearing stuff, they don't say, oh, they're not worried about me changing clothes. That's the other thing. If people say, oh, I got to change clothes 5 times this video because they're going to think it's the same. No, people don't care.
Yeah, it's funny when I've gone out and I've done it where Landon and I had gone out a couple of times and I would shoot video at different parts around Tampa, and I always had like 4 or 5 different jackets in the back of the car with me, so that every couple videos I would just put a different sport coat on, always with a white shirt underneath. But yeah, I would do it so that it wasn't always the same thing showing up over and over again. Now I got so many videos out there that it would be impossible for me to
I
run
do
the
wear
same
a
jacket.
couple different jackets just because it's so hot. I went through 5 shirts the other day.
Oof. Yeah, it's brutal, man. Well, what we miss before we wrap up?
Well, we missed, probably a ton of stuff, but
Yeah, well, that just means you got to come back.
I know.
Well,
So
good deal, man. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up because I got a couple of hungry dudes that I got to take to lunch here, in the
your
form of
sons.
my two sons.
Yeah.
So I
I also hey, you tell Grace and then Landon, if they ever want to brainstorm that stuff, reach out to me.
I
I'll brainstorm
absolutely
with them all
will.
day long because I know they're doing a lot of your content.
Yeah, I absolutely will. Grayson's actually spending a lot of time on insurance at this point, and Landon's kind of backfilling where Grayson was. So that's been fun to watch that transition
But
happen
that's kind
too.
of the way you want it. It's kind of the scaling of the family.
Yep, 100%. 100%. Well, listen, man, thanks for taking time out. Thanks for coming on short notice. Good conversation as always. How do they get a hold of you, man, if they have questions?
You said reach out to me on LinkedIn. Chris Greene on there. You can find me on Facebook. Find my YouTube channel, The Flood Insurance Guru. You can shoot me an email, chris@buildinganiche.com or chris@floodinsuranceguru.com.
And that's Chris Greene with an E, Greene. Make sure you add that, or you might get a Chris Greene you don't want to talk to.
There's actually several other ones in the insurance industry I discovered that spelled a different way. I said, oh, wow.
Yeah, no kidding, man. That's crazy. All right, brother. Well, listen, have a good weekend. Hope you
Thanks,
smoke
man.
something. See ya.